Just a few days ago, life felt normal. Busy with work deadlines and family responsibilities. My wife, Kelly, and I had our ups and downs. But nothing seemed unmanageable. We had built a life together full of joy and shared experiences. Though I couldn't shake a growing unease, I tried to dismiss it as just the stress of daily life. But the tension between Kelly and me grew, and our small disagreements became bigger. She seemed distant and erratic, and every time I tried to talk about it, she brushed me off. I knew something was wrong, but never imagined how bad it would get. Now, sitting on the bedroom floor, exhausted and overwhelmed, I could hardly believe where I was. Just a few days ago, I couldn't have imagined I'd be in this situation. The carpet, once a point of pride, was now ruined. A symbol of everything that had gone wrong. I closed my eyes and muttered, "What the hell am I doing?" "I'm better than this," I said. When I opened them, I saw the hardwood bed. And for a moment, I imagined Kelly standing there. But I knew that vision would never be real again. Everything was spinning out of control. My hands were shaking as I tried to steady myself, feeling overwhelmed by the situation. The world around me blurred. But I noticed a half-empty booze bottle and an empty pill bottle on the bed. I forgot to cap the bottle, I thought bitterly. The smell of booze filling the room. Panicked, I looked for the letters I had written. They were on the bedside table, not the mattress. Safe from being ruined. What if the wrong person finds them? I wondered. But quickly dismissed the thought. I wouldn't be around to worry about it. Why did it have to be this way? I asked myself, feeling bile rise in my throat. My daughter would hate me for this. But she probably already did after what happened last week. I can't take this pain anymore, I whispered. Even as my life drained away, the pain remained. A week ago, I would have fought to survive. But now I felt broken, unwanted, and despised. I saw no other option. The pain in my wrists had subsided slightly, leaving me in a daze as I drifted into a deep sleep. I expected something, maybe a flash of my life, a light, or even darkness. But there was nothing. Just the realization that I wanted to survive. But it was too late. As the blackness consumed me, I felt the last of my strength fade away. A week ago, I was laughing with my daughter, Grace, spinning her around our home in Perth, Australia. She was 19, and her boyfriend, John, had just proposed. "Dad, he proposed," she had said, her eyes shining. I had known it was coming and had given my blessing. Grace and John had been together since middle school, and I couldn't have been happier for her. Then Grace excitedly told Kelly and me about the proposal. "John sent me on a treasure hunt around town," she said. "And finally proposed under a tree in Kings Park," she added. Her joy contagious. I hugged her and twirled her around, thrilled for them. The next day in the kitchen, I reassured her. "Even though they're young, their love is strong," I said. I admired the engagement ring on her hand, smiling. "It's beautiful, Gracie," I said. Then turned to John. "You did a great job picking it out." Kelly, sitting nearby, snorted. At 42, she was still a beautiful woman. With brown hair, brown eyes, and a tan complexion. She raised her wine glass and said, "You should thank me, I helped John choose it." "Mom, that was inappropriate," Grace said, turning to her. "It's okay, sweetie," Kelly replied. "I know you made the final choice," she added. The comment made me uncomfortable. Kelly had been acting strangely over the past few months. Little things, comments, and actions. That didn't seem like the loving woman I knew. We continued to celebrate the engagement with a festive dinner. After dessert, Grace and John left for their apartment. And I couldn't shake the unease from Kelly's comment. The next morning, Kelly and I woke up slowly. As we started to get physical, she suddenly pulled away and walked off to the bathroom, leaving me stunned. "Kelly," I called, "what's the matter?" From the bathroom, she replied, "Is there anything for me?" A minute later, she added, "I'm already getting cleaned up." Shocked, I took a shower. and found a note in the kitchen saying she was leaving for the day. Anger boiled up. In all our years together, Kelly had never been so disrespectful. I started to wonder, is she cheating on me? I was lost in thought when my friend Roger called. "Hey, Bart, what's up?" he asked in his usual cheerful tone. "Nothing much," I replied, trying to hide my unease. "Something's off," Roger said, sensing it. I spent the next 10 minutes telling him about Kelly's strange behavior. Roger laughed. "If she's cheating, there's not much you can do. Divorce is $5,050, and she's out of work, she'll take you to the cleaners," he said. "That's not helping," I said, annoyed. "I'm just being realistic," Roger replied. "Let's talk tomorrow at work," he suggested. "We have a report on the Pembroke project due, and we can discuss this afterward," he added. "Sure," I agreed, without much enthusiasm. Roger and I worked together. I was the senior engineer, and he was the program manager. We made a great team, balancing each other's strengths. Somehow, I got through Sunday. Kelly came home late, nearly midnight, and didn't say a word, even though she knew I was awake. The next day, she tried to act as if nothing had happened. "It's not going to happen, Kelly," I said, getting out of bed. "What are you saying, no?" she asked, surprised. I started dressing for work. "After your disrespect last weekend, I can't," I said. "If you're cheating on me," I trailed off, unsure how to finish. She sneered. "What are you going to do, Bartholomew?" "There's nothing you can do," she said. Her tone softened slightly but still carried a hint of mockery. "Come on, just go back to bed," she urged. "We both need this," she added. I shook my head. "Who are you?" "You can't treat me like this, Kelly," I said. "The contempt you're showing is unbelievable," I added. "Well, screw you," she snapped, her voice full of venom. I left the room, disgusted with my wife. For the first time in 21 years of marriage. That morning at the office, I was visibly stressed. My assistant, Myra, noticed immediately. "Bart, are you okay? You seem off," she said with concern. Myra had been my assistant for 10 years. When she was hired, she had just left an abusive relationship and showed up to the interview with a black eye. Despite that, she was more than qualified for the job. Intelligent, capable, and much more than just a pretty face. Over the years, she earned my respect for her strong moral code and ability to handle herself. I hesitated but eventually told Myra about the situation with Kelly. As I spoke, her frown deepened. And by the end, she was clearly angry on my behalf. "I don't know what to do, Myra," I said. "If she's cheating on me, I didn't see it coming," I admitted, feeling defeated. Myra, who rarely touched me, placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "First, let's get through the Pembroke meeting," she said. "There are some issues with the pipes and concrete," she added, shifting focus to work. "What? Why didn't Roger mention this?" I asked, already thinking about how to handle the situation. Before we could discuss it further, Roger popped into my office. "You ready, buddy?" he asked, smiling. "Roger, what's this about problems with the pipes and concrete?" I asked quietly. He waved it off. "Don't worry, we'll sort it out." The meeting turned out to be a disaster. The Pembroke owners, usually friendly, were visibly upset. As I gave my progress report, their expressions grew darker. Peter, the CEO, asked, "What about the concrete and pipe overruns in the Northeast?" I looked to Roger, who just shrugged. With everyone staring at me, I said, "I need to check." "Last week's figures showed everything was within budget," I added. Peter's frown deepened. "Then why have I signed off on over $200,000 in extra costs for concrete and pipes over the last 3 months?" he asked. I was stunned and looked to Roger again. But his expression was unreadable. He suggested we step outside to figure things out. In another room, we met with our boss, Clarence. Before I could explain, Roger handed Clarence a folder. "They asked about the missing materials, as we expected," Roger said. Clarence turned to me, his eyes full of anger. "What are you saying, Bartholomew?" he nearly hissed. I was shocked by his tone. "Sir, I've been informed everything was on track," I said. "I didn't approve any extra costs," I added. Clarence opened the folder and glared at me. "So, this is the story you're sticking to?" he asked sharply. I was confused. "Roger, now serious," said, "we have requisitions for $26,000. The payments went to a bank account in your name," he added. "After all these years, this is how you repay me?" Clarence was almost yelling. I felt the situation spiraling out of control. The meeting ended, and Clarence and Roger took turns accusing me of fraud, refusing to believe I was innocent. They called an hour, and I was fired on the spot, with Clarence threatening to involve the police. To make matters worse, Myra was also fired, because of her close association with me, as I was escorted out with a few of my belongings. I caught Roger smirking, thinking I wouldn't notice. Outside, I found Myra by her car, crying and shocked. "Myra, are you okay?" I asked. But she spun around, furious. "You prick, Bartholomew," she shouted. "You committed $200,000 in fraud and ruined my job," she said. "I trusted you," she added. "It wasn't me, Myra," I tried to explain. She cut me off. "I saw the signed papers with your signature." "How could you?" she asked. "And that story about Kelly cheating, was that a lie too?" she said. "You've destroyed my career," she added. For the first time in our years working together, I saw pure anger from Myra. She slapped me hard, calling me a liar and a thief, before driving away. Stunned, I drove home, where Kelly was waiting. She sneered, "The cheating husband returns, pathetic." In the days that followed, I noticed Kelly seemed almost happy about everything. Confused, I confronted her. "What's going on, Kelly?" "I didn't do any of this," I said. Kelly grinned. "It doesn't matter, Bart, I'm done with you." A little later, there was a knock at the door. A man handed me a thick envelope. "You've been served," he said before leaving. It was divorce papers. "Kelly, a divorce?" I whispered, feeling my world fall apart even more. Kelly laughed. "Of course. I've been seeing someone else for months," she said. "He's everything you're not, interesting and with money," she continued. "You've lost your job, your family, and soon your freedom," she said. She leaned closer, enjoying my misery. "Make it easy for me or sign the papers," she said. "I'm taking the house and most of the property," she continued. "You'll be in jail soon anyway," she added. "So, you're staying with your lover?" I asked, feeling utterly betrayed. She laughed again. "Yes. And once you're in jail, we'll be renting out the place," she said. "Don't even think about stalking me, or I'll have you arrested," she added. I sat down, overwhelmed by everything. Kelly noticed the handprint Myra had left on my face, and smiled cruelly. "At least that strumpet got fired too. Go die in a hole, Bartholomew," she said. And with that, she walked out. I spent the rest of the day doing nothing. Not even drinking. The next day, still unsure of what to do, I tried calling Grace, but it went to voicemail. After about 20 rings, she finally answered. "What do you want?" she asked coldly. "Grace, I began. But she cut me off. "Just stop, Dad," she said harshly. "Mom told me everything about your cheating, lying, and affair with your assistant," she said. "You've ruined so many lives, and I've never been more disappointed in anyone," she added. I was speechless. Just as I tried to respond, she interrupted again. "Listen, John and I want nothing to do with you," she said. "You were on the news, the police are after you," she continued. "Don't come to our wedding," she said. "I don't want a man like you walking me down the aisle," she added. "I'll find someone else," she said. I said nothing as tears streamed down my face. "Are you even listening? Do you realize how badly you messed up?" Grace asked. But I could only sob. "Goodbye, Dad, you're dead to me," she said. "Don't ever contact me again," she added, then hung up. I collapsed, crying. 2 days later, the police arrested me. bombarding me with questions about the alleged fraud. They released me but told me not to leave town, as I had a court date the following week. Back home, I looked around at the family photos and Grace's trophies. So many memories now felt hollow. The past week had been a blur. Deep down, I knew I was missing something. But I had no idea what. My wife left me, my daughter disowned me. I was fired, and Myra blamed me. Even friends turned their backs, asking me to stay away. I was alone, defeated, with no idea what to do next. As an engineer, I was used to solving problems. But this felt impossible. After a shower, I forced down a stale sandwich. The taste only deepened my despair. Grace cutting me out of her life was the hardest blow. I stared at the table where a bottle of sleeping pills and booze sat. For the first time, dark thoughts crossed my mind. But I shook them off. I just needed time. The next morning, I received a restraining order, barring me from Kelly, John, or Roger, and demanding I leave the house by Monday. It struck me as odd that Roger was included. Something clicked. In a fit of rage, I texted him, "You prick, this is all your fault. I'm going to find you and destroy you," I added. I got no reply. But soon after, the detectives returned, reprimanding me for violating the restraining order. They didn't care about my side, they just wanted me in jail. They told me to stay in the house and pack my things, with a detective monitoring me. Frustrated, I downed 3 shots of booze, and decided to write notes to Kelly, Grace, and Myra. To Kelly, I wrote, "I'm disappointed in you. You're a traitorous strumpet, and I hope you burn in hell for what you've done to me," I continued. I filled the note with curses, then spat on it before sealing it in an envelope. To Grace, I expressed my deep sadness and disappointment. That she never asked if I was guilty. "I never cheated on your mother, she cheated on me," I wrote. "I never stole any money," I added. I urged her to see through the lies and to grow up. Then I softened my tone, encouraging her to love John fully and think kindly of me once things settled. I also asked her not to let Roger walk her down the aisle, as he had betrayed me. Tears stained the letter as I sealed it in an envelope. To Myra, I started with an apology. "You're not to blame for this situation," I wrote. I explained how I believed Roger had betrayed us both, and that he was likely the one involved with my wife. I apologized if I had ever made her uncomfortable with my glances, assuring her they were just a timid appreciation of her beauty. I asked for her forgiveness when her anger subsided. After sealing the letters, I placed them on the bedside table, attaching a post-it note for the detectives to investigate Roger's finances if they wanted the truth. "Next time, do your job and don't drive an innocent man to this," I wrote. I then took a bottle of booze and sleeping pills into the bedroom. After placing the letters on the bedside table, I attached a note for the detectives to investigate Roger. I took a long, hot shower, sipped more booze, and swallowed the pills. I dressed neatly before collapsing on the floor near the bathroom, holding a straight razor, as I considered ending it all. I thought about how I'd become unwanted and despised. Later, I learned Detective David Wright had come to my aid. He had been monitoring the situation, and after being alerted by a concerned neighbor, entered the house to find me in need of immediate help. An ambulance was called, and the house became a crime scene. I was in a critical state when they found me, barely conscious and quickly taken to safety. The investigation found 3 hidden cameras I knew nothing about, along with the booze, pill bottle, and letters. I was unconscious for 3 days. When I woke, a nurse quietly told me I was in a private hospital in Hollywood. She pointed out Myra, who had stayed by my side despite everything. Seeing her, I quietly said her name, waking her up. She immediately took my hand. "Bart, what were you thinking?" she demanded, her voice gentle despite her frustration, tears in her eyes. "I thought it would be better this way," I admitted, overwhelmed with shame. She snorted, "You think ending your life is the answer? "I've known you for over a decade, and I've never seen you give up so easily," she said. "What were you thinking?" she kept asking. Her voice steady as we sat in silence, with only the hum of machines around us. Finally, I spoke. "Myra, I'm so sorry. When Kelly, you, and Grace turned on me, I felt trapped," I said. "No one asked if I was guilty, I was just condemned," I continued. "My wife told me to die, my daughter disowned me," I said. "My friend betrayed me, and I hurt you," I added. "I wasn't thinking clearly, I got drunk," I said. "And in a weak moment, did what seemed right at the time," I continued. "I shouldn't be here," I said sadly. She nodded, then gently sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm sorry too, Bart," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "I was angry and didn't consider that you might be innocent," she said. "I was wrong," she added. "It's okay, Myra," I replied softly. "No, it's not," she said. "The fact that you're here, thinking I'm part of what drove you to this," she continued. "I don't know if I can forgive myself," she said, starting to cry. "It's okay, Myra," I repeated, closing my eyes, exhausted. We sat in silence, her hand holding mine. Until a doctor interrupted us, smiling as he looked at my chart. "Well, Mr. Other, it's good to see you awake," he said. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Alive, didn't expect to be," I replied. The doctor frowned, and Myra did too. "Let's work on keeping you that way," he said, downplaying my comment. He checked my stitches and vitals while Myra watched, gasping at the sight of my wounds. The doctor explained I needed to take it easy, due to the blood loss and the effects of the stomach pumping. He also mentioned a detective wanted to speak with me. When we were alone again, I asked Myra, "Are you here because of my letter?" She shook her head. "No, I haven't seen it. Detective Wright told me about it," she said, her voice shaking. "My cousin works here and called me when you were admitted after the self-destruction attempt," she continued. I couldn't look at her, feeling overwhelmed with shame. Myra continued, "I was still angry when I left. But deep down, I knew you couldn't have done it," she said. "I've worked with you for years," she continued. "When I heard what happened, I realized you had been set up," she said. "I'm so sorry, Bart," she sobbed, her head resting on my chest, tears soaking my gown. After a few minutes, she stood up, wiping her face. When she tried to pull her hand away from mine, I held on. She gently wiped the tears from my eyes and smiled. "I thought about it more and realized it didn't make sense," she said. "You always loved your job," she continued. "But when Roger showed me the documents, I was so angry," she said, noticing how I tensed at Roger's name. "It was him, wasn't it? Roger set you up," she said. I nodded. "I think so. I can't prove it, but the signs are there," I said. "He didn't warn us about the overspending," I continued. "And there are signed documents I've never seen," I said. "I also think he's involved with Kelly," I added. I paused, eyes closed, holding Myra's hand. "I'm sorry, Myra, I never thought Roger and Kelly would drag you into this," I said. "But I can't prove my innocence, which is why I did what I did," I concluded. We fell silent until a new voice entered the conversation. "You're right, you can't prove it," the man said. "They did a good job framing you," he continued. "But real criminals don't act like this," he added. The man who entered the room was large and fit, exuding confidence. "Mr. Other, I'm Detective David Wright," he said. "I, along with your neighbor, Mrs. Hawkins, found you," he continued. "Glad to see you're feeling better," he added. I shrugged, "Thanks. But I'm sure you'll be arresting me when I'm released," I said bitterly, feeling Myra squeeze my hand tighter. "About that," Detective Wright began. Myra and I looked at him as he ran his hand through his hair. "I've been assigned to your case, and some things don't add up," he said. "Would you be willing to be interviewed again?" he asked. "I think so, I've got nothing left to lose," I replied. Myra suddenly asked, "What about a lawyer? Shouldn't he have one?" The detective sighed, "Yes, he should have a lawyer, and it's a good idea. Myra nodded and said, "I'll take care of it." She left the room, making a call. As the detective and I watched her go, Detective Wright commented, "She cares about you a lot, Mr. Other. I think you need people on your side now," he said. "I'm the one you're investigating," I reminded him. He grinned, "True, but I think there's more to this case than meets the eye." "You do believe you're innocent, don't you?" he asked. "Absolutely, I'd never steal from a company I loved working for," I said, showing him my bandaged wrists. Just then, Myra returned. "My cousin, Reagan Brown, will be representing Bart," she announced. The detective smiled. "I know Reagan, she's a good lawyer. Have her contact me as soon as possible," he said. We talked for a few more minutes before the detective left. "That was unusual," I remarked. "Yeah, cops aren't usually this friendly," Myra agreed. We sat in silence for a bit before I asked, "Who's looking after Tilly?" "My mom's got her," Myra said, handing me a drawing from Tilly. A hospital scene with a "get well soon" message. It brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I said hesitantly. "Have you heard from Grace?" I asked. Myra shook her head. "I've tried calling, but no response," she said sadly. We talked quietly until Reagan arrived. After introductions, Myra stepped out, leaving us alone. Reagan, like Myra, was attractive, with sandy brown hair. And it was clear they were related. "She likes you, you know," Reagan said, echoing the detective. I snorted. "We've worked together for years." Reagan smirked. "Men can be clueless." I laughed without humor. "I think my ex-wife proves that." Reagan gave me a sad smile. "Don't worry, I've talked to Detective Wright, and it seems he's on your side," she said. "I have some theories about what's going on, and I'll handle your case," she continued. "Your only crime was trusting the wrong people," she said. She then asked, "What do you want from the divorce?" My face darkened. "I want as much as I can get." Reagan understood my anger. "Kelly and Roger set you up, possibly stole from the firm, and left you to take the fall," she said. "You have every right to go after them with everything you've got," she continued. "Don't hold back," she added. I liked my new lawyer, Reagan. She spent time with me, asking about the events leading up to my self-harm, and reassuring me that things would be okay. She said she'd contact me for a formal police interview after my release. The next few days were slow. I stayed in the hospital, with doctors and nurses checking on me regularly. Without my phone, I couldn't call anyone. And I doubted anyone wanted to hear from me anyway. But Myra visited the next day, bringing me a paperback book, Hyperion, by Dan Simmons, which made me laugh. It was a book I'd enjoyed years ago. As Myra sat beside me, reading her Pride and Prejudice, she smiled and said, "I'm here to look after you." We chatted, and at lunch, she brought me roast beef with chips and a chicken wrap for herself. Despite the pain in my wrists, I began to feel a bit more like myself. Later, Myra returned just as the doctors removed my IV, and informed me I'd be discharged the next morning if my blood tests were clear. I told her, "I don't know where to go. I don't have a phone or wallet to get a hotel, and I can't go home," I said. Myra smiled. "Reagan got a court order to access your belongings. I brought your phone, wallet, clothes, laptop, iPad, and shaving supplies," she said. I was stunned by her kindness. "Thank you, now I can at least find a hotel," I said. But I noticed she looked worried. "What's wrong?" I asked. "You were right about Roger and Kelly," she said quietly. "When Reagan, the officer, and I went to get your things, they were there, living together," she continued. "They weren't expecting visitors," she said. I sighed. "I'm sorry you had to see that." "What happened?" I asked. She smiled slightly. "They yelled at me to leave, until the officer warned them they'd be arrested for violating a court order," she said. "Then I got your things," she added. Tears welled up in her eyes as she recalled seeing the blood stain on the carpet. "Don't ever do that again," she pleaded. "I promise," I replied, holding up my bandaged hands. The next day, freshly cleaned up, Myra met me as I was discharged. And we walked to her car. She drove me to a condo complex in Kings Park. "Myra, why are we here? Can I stay at your place?" I asked. "Of course you can't," she smiled. "You don't need to spend money on a hotel," she said. "Stay in my guest room for a few days," she continued. "Reagan is meeting us this afternoon to discuss your case," she added. I'd been to Myra's house before. A cozy 2-story home she shared with her daughter, Tilly. After settling in, Reagan arrived, bringing legal documents and a serious expression. "Bart, you're a very lucky man," she said. She explained that Roger and Kelly almost got away with everything. But their plan unraveled. My accounts were frozen, including one they'd fraudulently opened in my name. Reagan had obtained video evidence of them opening the account, and was pursuing legal action for fraud and mental cruelty. She assured me they'd face consequences soon. Reagan also told us she had initiated legal proceedings against my former employer for unfair dismissal. She expected everything to be resolved by the end of the week, and arranged a formal interview with Detective Wright for the next day, advising me to follow her instructions. She believed my wife and Roger would be arrested soon. Over the next hour, we discussed details and signed documents. Reagan assured me that all charges would be dropped. The next day, after she left, I unpacked my clothes and toiletries. Myra and I spent the afternoon talking about what might happen next. When Myra left to pick up Tilly from school, I turned on my phone for the first time in days. I found missed calls and texts, mostly from Kelly, taunting me to sign the divorce papers before I ended up in jail. Interestingly, there were also several missed calls from my former job, asking me to get in touch. But there was nothing from Grace. When Myra and Tilly returned, Tilly eagerly shared her day with me, full of energy and excitement. I enjoyed spending time with her, helping with homework and reading together. She reminded me so much of Myra, and her innocent joy was a welcome relief from my worries. We had dinner and watched TV together before bedtime. Tilly asked me to put her to bed, and gave me a hug that almost brought tears to my eyes. Her genuine affection was a stark contrast to the pain of Grace's rejection. Afterward, Myra and I sat on the couch, talking. She held my hand and hugged me, assuring me that everything would be okay. The next day, after the interview with Detective Wright and Reagan, all charges against me were dropped. That evening, the news reported that Kelly and Roger had warrants out for their arrest for fraud and identity theft, but they were nowhere to be found. Later that evening, Grace called for the first time, but I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk to her. The next day, she called and texted repeatedly, asking me to call her, but I wasn't ready. Her sudden concern felt insincere, driven by the fallout from her mother and Roger's actions. I was angry that she had abandoned me so easily, and only reached out now. That night, I had a nightmare about the night I hurt myself. In it, Kelly and Roger were mocking me, and Myra, Grace, and John joined in, leaving me to die. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. Myra rushed to my side, with Tilly standing in the doorway, crying. I put my head in my hands and sobbed. "I'm sorry, I can't do this," I said, trying to calm down. Myra and Tilly climbed onto the bed with me. Tilly reassured me, saying, "It's all right, Uncle Bart. You just had a bad dream," she continued. "Mom and I will stay with you," she added. I couldn't sleep after that. Tilly eventually fell asleep beside me, her hand on my stomach, while Myra looked at me with concern. "Are you okay, Bart?" she asked gently, holding me close. I thought for a moment. "No, I'm not okay. It was a dream about that night," I said. I couldn't finish, but Myra understood. She kissed my cheek and nuzzled into my neck. "What are we going to do, Bart?" she whispered, her voice full of pain. I hugged her and Tilly close. "We'll figure it out, it'll be okay," I said. In that moment, Myra's concern helped me feel more like myself. than I had since that terrible night. I held them both until the sun rose, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. The next morning, after breakfast, Myra took Tilly to school. While I started searching for a counselor, I knew I needed help. By the time Myra returned, I had already made several calls. She smiled at me, then became serious. "Bart, can we talk?" she asked, leading me to the couch. I nodded, thinking I knew where this was going. "It's okay, Myra," I said. "I realized last night was scary with Tilly here," I continued. "It's not good if I'm waking up screaming," I said. "I'll find somewhere else," I added. Her eyes widened, and she quickly grabbed my hands, looking panicked. "No, Bart, that's not what I wanted to talk about," she said. "It's actually the opposite," she added. She took a deep breath. "Bart, I'm in love with you," Myra said, almost babbling. "Excuse me?" I replied, stunned. "I'm in love with you and have been for a long time," she repeated, more softly, blushing. She searched my face as she continued. "When I heard you were in the hospital, I went crazy with worry," she said. "I couldn't stand the thought of losing you without telling you how I felt," she added. I was speechless. She went on, "I tried to keep it to myself. But seeing you hurt last night broke my heart," she said. "Have you noticed I don't go on dates?" she asked. "Yes," I answered, puzzled. "But I assumed it was because of Tilly," I said. "That's partly true," she admitted. "But it's also because no one else measures up to you," she said. She explained how she had admired me from the moment she started working with me. "I treated her with respect, helped her, and made Tilly feel special," she said. "You've been like a father figure to her," Myra added. "When everything fell apart last week, you handled it with grace," she said. "You didn't lash out, even when I did," she continued, blushing, recalling how she had slapped me. "You're an amazing man, Bart," she said. "I love you for so many reasons," she continued. "If Kelly was foolish enough to throw you away, I'm here to pick you up," she said. She kissed me, and time seemed to stop. "Will you take me, Bart? Will you make me your woman?" Myra asked. I was stunned. I had fantasized about her before, but this was happening so fast. I knew things with Kelly were over, and Myra's love made me feel less like a failure. But I also feared it might backfire. Myra seemed to sense my hesitation but said nothing. She simply took my hand and led me to her bedroom. Afterward, we fell asleep. I had another dream, like the one before, where Kelly and Roger were tormenting me. But this time, Myra appeared, healed my wounds, and flew away, leaving the scene of anxiety and sorrow. We woke to the sound of the alarm. I shuddered but didn't scream. As we dressed, I told Myra about the dream, and she looked concerned. She took me with her when she went to pick up Tilly from school. A few more weeks passed, and both Roger and Kelly were arrested while trying to flee the country. They panicked when they realized the charges against me had been dropped, and drove from Perth to Adelaide, where they were caught by customs. It took 2 months for them to be brought back to Perth. But during that time, my relationship with Myra grew stronger. I moved into her bedroom, now our bedroom, and felt like I was in my 20s again. I'd clearly fallen in love with her. When Roger and Kelly were brought back to Perth, I realized Myra was right. I barely thought about Kelly anymore. A month later, Myra, Reagan, and I testified in court against Kelly and Roger. Roger avoided looking at me during the trial, and was sentenced to 15 years. Kelly, however, kept her eyes on me the entire time. It was revealed that Roger had masterminded the entire scheme, seduced Kelly and orchestrated the fraud. Kelly was sentenced to 20 years as an accessory, with an additional 5 years for mental cruelty, based on evidence from hidden cameras she had set up for Roger. After the verdict, the judge granted our divorce. Reagan pointed out that we had split our savings, and agreed to sell the house, with proceeds divided immediately. I also agreed, with considerable persuasion from Reagan. to act as trustee for Kelly's funds until she served her time. I wasn't allowed to use her funds but could invest them. The court ordered Roger and Kelly to begin their sentences immediately. Kelly's lawyer requested I spend an hour with her before she was taken to jail. And after some hesitation, I agreed. In the interrogation room, Kelly looked defeated. Her shoulders slumped. Unlike in the courtroom, she didn't meet my gaze. After a few minutes of silence, she quietly said, "I'm sorry, Bartley." I was surprised that she spoke first and apologized. "Are you, Kelly?" I asked, letting some bitterness show. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Yes, Bart, I'm sorry," she said. "I don't know what happened to me," she continued. "I loved you and still do, despite what I did," she said. "But one day, I woke up feeling a sense of loss I can't explain," she added. She looked down at her hands and continued. "A few weeks after I first felt lost, things started spiraling," she said. "I got angry at you because you still loved me, even though I didn't feel the same," she continued. "Roger noticed and started pushing my buttons," she said. "It took a month before the affair began," she continued. "He played on my insecurities and got me into bed," she said. "Then used my guilt to set his plan in motion," she added. "You may not have known, but Roger was always jealous of you," she said. "Your leadership, your success," she continued. "He convinced me to open a bank account in your name," she said. "And make it look like you stole money," she added. "We both knew you were trusted," she said. "And by the time it all unraveled, Roger planned for us to escape with the money," she continued. "We thought we'd be out of reach if we were caught," she said. "Meanwhile, you didn't care that you were destroying me," I said, struggling to contain my anger. She nodded sadly. "At first, I didn't want to. But Roger broke me down, piece by piece," she said. "To make the plan work, you had to be completely broken," she added. "You nearly succeeded," I replied. "If not for Detective Wright and Myra, you might have," I said. We sat in silence. Before Kelly asked, "Can I see them?" Understanding, I placed my scarred hands on the table. She gasped and started to reach for them but hesitated, tears streaming down her face. Inside, I was overwhelmed with emotions. Rage, shame, and, to my surprise, a lingering shred of love for her. Kelly seemed to sense my turmoil and looked at me intensely. "I'm really sorry, Bart," she said. "I'm ashamed of what I did," she continued. "I'm going to serve my 20 years without appeal," she said. "I deserve it," she added. I nodded, relieved she would face her sentence. She looked up again. "Bart, just so you know, you were never a bad lover," she said. "You were far better than Roger," she continued. "He was selfish in bed, unlike you," she said. "I have no excuse for how I treated you that last morning," she added. We were quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "You and Myra?" "Yeah," I replied, a bit unsure. She smiled weakly. "Good. She's loved you for years, you know," she said. "I just found out recently," I admitted. With passion and pain in her voice, she said, "May she love you and heal the pain I caused. She'll never betray you like I did," she continued. "She's everything I'm not," she added. "Kelly, I hesitated, unsure of what to say. "Don't worry," she said, wiping my tears with her sleeve. "I agreed to your terms," she said. "I was surprised by how generous you were, even after everything," she added. I sighed. "Kelly, I once loved you more than you realized. If you had talked to me about your feelings, maybe we could have avoided all this," I said. "But I'm trying to move past what you did," I continued. "I still hold a lot of anger inside," I said. "I want to scream at you, strangle you for what you said," I continued. "But I can't," I said. "I chose to end my life, and I have to live with that," I added. We sat quietly for a moment. Then Kelly said, "I'm sorry, Bart, you deserve better than what I gave you. I share the guilt for pushing you too far," she said. "I'll always be ashamed," she continued. "I saw the letter you wrote, and you were right," she said. "I will burn for what I did," she continued. But I thank God you're still alive, she added. I clenched my teeth, struggling with the emotions swirling inside me. How could Kelly say these things now? Trying to ease the anger and pain I was still holding on to. It wasn't fair. So I changed the subject. I offered to manage your money out of respect for our years together, I said. You'll have enough to start over when you get out, if you want to, I added. Trying and failing to hide my emotions. Kelly noticed my attempt but went along with the change in topic. Laughing bitterly, I'll be in my 60s by then. Hopefully enough to retire on, she said. Keep at it, and you'll make it to 80, I said. We talked briefly about our finances, which relaxed us both a bit. But I sensed she had more to say. Have you talked to Grace? She asked, hesitating. I shook my head. Grace cut me off, accepted your lies, and it broke me. She never even asked if I was innocent, I said. She just threw me away, I continued. After that call, I stopped, turning away to hide my tears. If I had looked back, I would have seen Kelly crying too. Facing away, I continued. Myra tried contacting Grace while I was in the hospital. But there was nothing, I said. I wiped my face and sat back down while Kelly did the same. I'm sorry, Bart, Kelly said, wrinkling her nose. Roger and I planned this, including turning Grace against you, she admitted. I nodded, anger flashing in my eyes as Kelly admitted her actions. She hung her head in shame. Knowing she had ruined my relationship with our daughter. If it's any consolation, Kelly said sadly. Grace has cut me off too, she continued. She's angry and scared, and I can't fix it, she said. She feels guilty about how she treated you, she added. And the fact that you're not talking to her makes it worse, she said. Kelly paused, then continued. Bart, I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything. But could you find it in you to forgive Grace? She asked. She needs at least one parent, she said. I realize now that even if I wasn't in prison, the guilt of what I did would have destroyed me, she continued. Please, Bart, take care of our daughter, she said. I took a deep breath. What you're asking is hard. You hurt me deeply, I said. But when Grace told me I was dead to her, that hurt more than anything you did, I continued. I want to reconnect with her, but the pain of what she and you did, I said. I don't know how to get past it, I added. Kelly nodded, understanding my struggle. I get it, she said sadly. Knowing I was trying but still had a long way to go. I sighed. Look, Kelly, I'm trying not to hate you. I'm getting professional help, but it's hard not to yell and curse at you, I said. As for Grace, I'll consider talking to her, but I can't promise anything, I added. Kelly seemed to age before my eyes during this conversation. She stood up and said, Bart, I know it means little now, but I'm sorry for what I did. I have no excuses, and I know I can never make up for it, she continued. I'll serve my time and hope that one day you might forgive me, she said. She looked up at me, her face lined with wrinkles. You may not believe me, but I still love you, she said. I lost sight of that for a while, but I always will, she added. We stood in awkward silence as tears streamed down Kelly's face. She knocked on the door, and her prison escort opened it. Before leaving, she looked back at me. Love my Grace, she said. Give her the love I foolishly threw away, she continued. Live a beautiful life and hold your head high, she said. Remember, there are people who care about you, even in my darkest times, she added. I lost sight of that, but I'm proud of you, she said. You're becoming yourself again, she continued. Goodbye, my beautiful man, I'll never forget you, she said as she walked out. I reflected on our conversation. There was no shouting. Kelly had accepted responsibility and her prison sentence. As I left the room, I noticed a trail of tears on the floor where Kelly had walked. I paused, mourning what once was. Then turned and walked away. My spirits lifted when I saw Myra waiting for me in the public gallery. Looking beautiful, even on such a solemn day. Did everything go well? She asked. Yes, I replied. It was surprising, I said. I expected excuses, but she took most of the blame and showed real remorse. I continued. What do you think about that? Myra asked. I still have a lot of anger toward Roger and her, I said. But unlike Roger, I also feel sorry for her, I continued. She knows she ruined everything, and now she's paying for it, I said. Grace has cut her off too, I added. Myra nodded, then hesitated. John and Grace are here, she said. John said they'd be at the cafe across the street if you wanted to talk, she continued. Apparently, they had a big fight over how Grace treated you, she said. But she's desperate to see you, she added. I took a deep breath. You think I should talk to her, don't you? Myra nodded. Yes, my love. There's a pain in your soul that only Grace can heal, she said. But I'll be with you the whole time, she continued. And if I need to, I'll defend you like a mama bear, she added. I love you, Bart, she said. I leaned in and kissed her. I love you too, Myra. It was my first public declaration of love for her. And I didn't care who saw. Myra was the only person who mattered. Let's go, I said. And we walked hand in hand to the cafe. As we entered, we saw Grace and John. Grace seemed torn between running away or hugging me. I opened my arms, and she clung to me, crying and repeatedly saying, I'm sorry, Daddy. I glanced at Myra, who smiled, and at John, who looked unsure of what to do. After a few minutes, I gently pushed Grace away, and we all sat down. I just talked to your mom, I said quietly. Grace nodded. I heard, Dad. I'm sorry, she started. I held up my hand to stop her. I know, Gracie, your mom explained a lot, I said. But your words hurt me deeply, I continued. I felt abandoned by someone I thought would always care about me, I said. What hurt the most was that you didn't even ask if I was innocent, I added. Grace blushed with embarrassment. Dad, she squared her shoulders. No, I need to say this, she said. I should have given you a chance to explain, but I didn't, she continued. I can't blame Mom or Roger, but they convinced me you were guilty, she said. That you were going to jail, that you were having an affair, she added. She glanced at Myra, then at me. They said you just wanted attention, she said. But it's true, Dad, you were trying to. She couldn't finish the sentence. And none of us could. I nodded, took a deep breath, and showed Grace my scars. I'm sorry, Gracie, I said. I was at my lowest point and didn't see a way out, I continued. I got drunk and made a terrible mistake, I said slowly. It was hard to speak, but I knew I had to show her the impact of her words. Grace began sobbing into her hands, while Myra held me close as our emotions threatened to overwhelm us. After a few moments of silence, John spoke up, trying to lighten the mood. I know this is serious, but can I assume something good came out of all this? He asked, gesturing to Myra and me. Grace looked up, eyes widening. Daddy, you and Myra? She asked. Yes, I nodded, feeling the need to explain. But it wasn't an affair like your mother told you, I said. I never cheated, I continued. When I woke up in the hospital, Myra refused to leave me, I said. Even though she believed what Roger and your mother said for a while, I added. We reconciled, and I realized how much she loved me, I said. Myra blushed, wrapping her arms around me, and gave me a quick kiss. John smiled, and Grace, after a moment, found her composure. Thank you, she said to Myra. Thank you for being there for my dad, she added. Myra laughed, which eased the tension. And we spent the next few hours talking, sharing our experiences. At one point, Grace switched seats with Myra to give me a hug. While that meeting didn't heal everything, it was a start. It took months for Grace and me to rebuild our relationship. And we went to counseling together, to work through trust issues and other challenges. One difficult session involved me asking Grace not to cut her mother out of her life completely. Despite everything, Kelly was still her mother, and she was paying the price for her actions. Grace agreed to visit Kelly, but only if I went with her the first time. That meeting was tough, and we didn't talk much about it afterward. But Grace made an effort. And a week later, Kelly sent me a letter thanking me for convincing her. 6 months later, when things had settled, I proposed to Myra. During a family dinner, Tilly and Grace thought it was long overdue. And John shook my hand, telling me to take care of her. Repeating my own words back to me. Soon after, Grace and John got married, with my blessing. Myra visited Kelly in jail and asked if she could take over as mother of the bride. Kelly, in tears, agreed. Tilly was the flower girl, proudly calling herself my second daughter. From that moment, I was no longer Uncle Bart but Dad. Walking Grace down the aisle, I felt the last remnants of our strained relationship disappear. And later, Grace sent photos and a letter to Kelly, thanking her for allowing Myra to step in. I hear Kelly keeps those on the wall in her cell. Meanwhile, as the legal issues with Roger and Kelly settled, Reagan negotiated a significant settlement for Myra and me. Clarence initially resisted. But just before the trial, he offered a deal that Reagan rejected as too low. Eventually, we secured a high 6-figure sum for Myra, and a 7-figure sum for me. The settlement was small compared to the potential damage of a public trial. But it forced Clarence to retire and sell his company for much less than it was worth. With the settlement money, Myra and I started our own engineering consulting firm, offering administrative and engineering services. Within 6 months, we had 5 employees working on large projects across the country. One of our first clients was Peter Pembroke, who took us to dinner to apologize. He realized we had been wronged, and admitted that the project had nearly failed without my engineering skills. Since then, we've been invited to all major Pembroke events, whether we're working on their projects or not. Peter was a good man caught in a bad situation, eager to make amends. We sold Myra's small house and bought a much larger one, with a stunning view of Kings Park. The old 5-bedroom, 3-bath house needed restoration, and we spent 2 years fixing it up, taking breaks only for family holidays, a wedding, and the birth of Grace and Tilly's little brother, Byron. Life improved, though I still had occasional bad dreams, with Myra always by my side. More than a decade later, Byron was 10. And Tilly was in university, studying law like Aunt Reagan. One lazy Saturday, Grace and John were with us on our front terrace, overlooking Kings Park. Byron was playing Xbox with my 7-year-old grandson, Bruce, while my 5-year-old granddaughter, Hope, tried to join in. Grace brought up her mother. "Dad, I got a letter from Mom this week," she said cautiously. Although Kelly wasn't a taboo topic, everyone tread lightly when mentioning her. Over the years, I had received several letters from Kelly, and even visited her a few times. I knew she was in treatment and respected in prison, despite having 8 years left on her sentence. "What did she say?" I asked. "Among other things, she mentioned that Roger was released last month," Grace said. I silently sipped my drink, feeling Myra's hand on mine. "Did she say anything else?" Myra asked. Grace nodded. "Yeah, she said he came to see her. He didn't look well, and it wasn't a calm conversation," she said. "I'll visit her next week to learn more," she added. We discussed this briefly. Then I called David Wright, now a close friend and head of the major crimes team. "Bart, how are you? How's Myra?" David greeted me warmly. "Myra is great," I replied. "But I just found out Roger was released," I said. David's tone grew serious. "Yes, I got the report yesterday. I plan to tell you at bowling next week," he said. "He's moving to Adelaide, got a job," he continued, "and told his probation officer he wished you'd rot in hell for ruining his life," he said. "He's had a tough time, though, and I don't think he'll be a problem," he added. "Thanks, David, that was my concern," I said. "If I hear anything, I'll let you know," he said. We talked briefly about bowling and an upcoming barbecue. Before I returned to the table, Myra asked, "David?" I nodded. He confirmed Roger's released and moving to Adelaide. "But he still hates me," I said. The feeling's mutual, I added. I told the family. The rest of the day was subdued. But my family made sure I felt supported. That night, I woke up screaming from my first nightmare in years. In it, Roger threatened my family, forcing me to use the razor again. Myra woke up instantly, trying to calm me down. Without hesitation, she called my therapist, who kindly took our call at 2 a.m. I explained the dream while Myra cried beside me. Talking about it helped, and my therapist suggested the dream was triggered by Roger's release and my lingering anxiety. We arranged a follow-up session. Afterward, Myra checked on Byron, who was still asleep. Tilly was awake but went back to bed after hearing our conversation. I lay back down, and Myra snuggled close. "Do you think Roger will be a problem?" she asked, concerned. "No, I think he'll disappear, and we won't hear from him again," I said. "And even if we do, we're prepared," I added, hinting at the hunting gear stored safely. Myra nodded. "I'm sorry this news upset you. Are you okay?" she asked. "Sort of," I replied. "There will always be a shadow from those days," I said. "But I focus on the good now," I continued. "I'm grateful for you, the woman who saved my life," I said. Myra looked at me seriously. "I love you, Bart." "I love you too, Myra," I replied. We fell asleep. And while life wasn't perfect, we had more good days than bad. There were still fights, nightmares, and challenges. But I knew I had the unconditional love of a woman who made everything possible. Friends who accepted me. And a family that supported me through life's storms.